Right. Sorry, that was me running things a little bit late. Yeah, so internal communications are one of the issues that create most problems within a firm, and the difficulties that can arise from that. Customers don't receive what they should receive. Things don't get, messages about changes don't get put through, and you know, people get upset by bad communication. So we're looking at models of communication. This means a simple description of a system that's used for explaining how something works, or a set of variables and their interrelationships designed to represent some real system process. In whole or in part, and in business communication models, means the graphical presentation of the elements of communication process. One business communication model was produced quite a while ago by the Greek philosopher Aristotle. It's popularly known as Aristotle's Persuasion model. According to him, when any political leader or a teacher delivers his speech in a gathering or in a classroom, respectively, their style of speech is included in the persuasion model. The model is shown below. In this model, we have a speaker, the actual speech, and the audience. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is one of the simplest models of communication. It's Newcomb's interpersonal communication model. In this model, there are three parties to effect the communication process. According to Newcomb, there might be a third party between the sender and the receiver, and that third party can manipulate the communication process. We've all heard the story about Chinese whispers, haven't we? Where the message starts off at one end and ends up at the other as something totally different. So that is when there are many stages of communication, and this is what I was referring to earlier when I mentioned internal communications. If there are too many processes within the internal communication system, what tends to happen is messages get, let's say, distorted from what they were meant to be originally. So this topic has whatever it is, the message sender, the topic, and the message receiver, and it's saying there could be a third party in between there that can make a difference to the outcome, put it that way. Another model is Hoveland's persuasion model, almost the same as Aristotle's really, but the difference is between them, this model, the audience plays in a certain place and hears the speech, and the feedback of the audience's response is returned to the speaker. It's a bit like written communication where, for instance, the teacher, when you start to produce some material towards this qualification, you'll probably email that to your tutor, who will have a look at it, give you some feedback from there, and send it back to you. But this model involves the audience in returning response to the speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. Okay. Oh, the wrong one. That's it. Thayer's organizational model. This creates a link between personal business communication and organizational structure. In this model, Thayer has shown that an attempt, or any attempt, to accomplish any task through personal communication greatly influences the process of the organizational communication. So where people are personally involved, yeah, then it's much more likely to get through. A lot of companies now will have, where they're involved in sales and so forth, they will have a team that deals with other particular companies, and they will have probably no more than 5 companies. Each person will have no more than 5 companies to deal with. I think the term is relationship managers. You may have seen that apply on certain emails that you may have got. And this is where that person only deals with those particular firms. And it's been found to be really successful. So in easy terms, it's where you create a personal link within the communication system that deals with, so people know directly who they're speaking to at any one time.
Right.
Thayer has mentioned 4 levels in this communication model. Oops, jumped on me. Such an interpersonal or individual interpersonal organisation and technological system, this model also shows how a person does communication functions in at organisational level. The behaviour of the sender and receiver can be influenced by 4 elements: biological, physiological, social, and technological. Actually, this model shows how communication process is affected by a person in an organisational atmosphere. I notice I've looked at the top of the screen, and if you can see the top of my screen, you will see my large bearded face looking at you. That is one method of using this, so that you can actually see the tutor who's speaking to you. Sometimes if you've got the facility, you can switch on your own camera, and I can then get a picture of you on the other side as well. But that's, again, just an example of this particular model.
Right.
Oops. Have you got any questions for me at this stage?
Not at this stage.
Okay, fine. We'll move on. Shanon and Weaver's information theory model. This model shows that the communication begins from the brain of the sender. The sender molds his thought, concept, or ideas into the message and sends to the receiver. Then the message goes to the receiver through a certain media, and his brain or her brain receives it. After the message being perceived, the reaction of the receiver is sent back to the source of the message, the sender. The model also includes a transmitter that converts the message into some sort of perceivable signal. That can be verbal or it can be visual. The whole process can be interrupted by noise or background noise. The model shown below is shown below. Let's come on. So again, you've got the information source, the sender, transmitter, the media or type of media you're using, the receiver of the message, which will be the destination, and then the response or feedback or answer comes back to the information source. So it's really just a circular model, if you like. But there can be at all stages within this situation a source of noise or background that disturbs the message. Colin and Gvetsko's group communication model. This model analyzes the decision-making process or communication in small and big or larger groups. The group communication is almost the same organizational communication model, and it's shown here. So that's work, barriers to the work environment, behavior related to the work environment. That moves down into group production, individual production, and that moves back up into the reward for work, and then down round here, yeah, and back in by interpersonal messaging, yeah, or individual production, yeah.
Right.
The noise can be public or interpersonal and environmental barriers. Oops. From the figure, it's clear that the above 3 boxes indicate the source of a problem. the group's behaviour to it, and the reward of work environment, and the 3 boxes below indicate the sources of public behaviour, interpersonal behaviour and interpersonal reward. In every group communication, this process is active, and environmental barriers in the workplace and interpersonal environmental barriers largely impact on this type of group communication. An example of that is if you are in, if you're perhaps giving a message or using a telephone in an extremely noisy environment. Now that can be also if you're delivering a message actually in a group to a group in a classroom, for instance, and there's a huge amount of racket going on around that, then that will have the same effect. You are sending the message out. The people who are listening to you will react differently, each one, to the noise. Some may be not bothered by it. Some of them might just feel it's a nuisance, and others may be quite troubled by it. So again, that's an explanation really of that type of model. Circular model of communication. In real sense, business communication is a two-way process where the sender sends a message and the receiver, and after having received the message, the receiver sends feedback to the sender or answers whatever the remark was made. The success of business communication process largely depends on the reaction or response or feedback from the receiver. The circular model of communication emphasizes that the feedback system of communication is presented below. These more complex ones. This model analyzes the decision-making process or communication in small and big large groups. The group communicated, backwards that one, aren't you? Sender, message, receiver, feedback. That's the simplest model of communication. It's the one that takes place more often. Usually it can be directly by letter or email and also by telephone, which is the usual communication of this method, where two people will be speaking on a subject they know something about. I give you a ring, where are we going tonight, what time are we going to meet? And the information comes back to the sender. So that's a quite straightforward model that is probably used more than any other.
Mm-hmm.
Stubbs and Moss have developed the interactional model of business communication. This model shows the communication process as an exchange process of message between the parties. It's the same as the circular method to a large degree, where the information that one person sends is sent directly back from the other. So it's slightly different. You've got person X and person Y. Person X is the sender, Y is the receiver. You've got a message. The message goes back from the sender, and they give another message back where they become the receiver and the sender. So therefore, it's much the same as the circular method, where one person is sending information to the other one by whatever means, and that person then responds to the information that's been sent. Yeah, showing exactly the same thing as the one before. He sends his response to X, who becomes the receiver this time. It's just saying that instead of a circular model, it's backwards and forwards. That's a two-way business communication model. Berlow's SMCR model. This model of business communications developed by David K. Berlow in 1960, where S stands for the source, M the message, and C for the channel or means of communication, and R for the receiver. Oops, jump. But again, it's showing a similar pattern where you've got the source, and the way the source acts in this stage is also part of it. So you're looking at the culture, the social system, the knowledge, the attitudes, and the communication skills that are coming from the source and the message through the channel to the receiver. And again, it's a backwards of. It depends on their communication skills, attitudes, knowledge, and social system and the culture as to what their response will are. Barlow is saying that it will make a difference to their response if you include the things that are involved. Now, if it's somebody you don't know, then obviously all these things will apply. But where it's somebody or between two persons that are known, then this model is less apparent than the others. It also indicates that both the sender and the receiver are influenced by their own culture, social system, knowledge, attitude, and communication skills. Though this model doesn't emphasise on feedback, it's comprehensive. It's a comprehensive model because it shows that the sender and the receiver can be influenced by various factors that may also act as sources of noise. Well, yeah, that would be apparent if it was two people speaking on this level that didn't know each other or weren't aware of each's situation. But where people are well known to each other, then this would not apply. Believe it or not, there is a modern model of communication. Over a period of time, business communication process has been developed quite a lot. The communication theorists are still investing their endeavour to make the business communication system more comprehensive and conceivable, including important and new items or elements in it. The modern communication model has important and new items or elements in it. It's evolved from Shanon and Weaver's information theory model, and modern communication is presented below. And lo and behold, it's very similar. Sender, the encoding or message, the decoding of the message, that's understanding what's actually being sent. The receiver, the response, the feedback, back to the sender. Oops. The major parts in the communication process, the message and media are the major communication tools, and by media, it depends on the type or method of communication that you're using. Most of the time, these days, communication is largely by email, but obviously verbal communication by telephone as well. Another instance, of course, is that letters are still sent. If you've got any dealings with your local council or anybody like a solicitor's office or anything of that nature, they will usually come by letter. More and more people like your media supplier and that are asking you to actually use electronic communication rather than using paper-based, because A, it's costly to them, it's not as quick, and it's just a waste of resources. So they're all becoming green. So, a bit down the model here, make it up a bit. So yeah, we're going to look at methods of communication. The first one, of course, is face-to-face. And some of the things I've already mentioned, that why technology is rampant, face-to-face communication remains a key method for communicating in business environments. One reason for this is continued preference for face-to-face communication, says Huggins. It's increased the amount of techno chatter that people experience on a daily basis. Many distance meetings now are now being done electronically. Video conferencing has become the norm for some of the larger organisations, and again, it brings that face-to-face communication system in, and it keeps that in place. Yeah, email is an increasingly common method. It's become almost the most common method now. In many organisations, it is used even when people may sit in offices and cubicles next to each other. Emails can be used to communicate quickly with thousands of individuals in a variety of locations and offers the flexibility and convenience. An example of that, I was busy yesterday with some work, and I was sent a text to let me know that my coffee was ready. So that's an example of using the electronic communication of some sort in a sort of lazy manner. But of course, it's not just lazy. It actually is useful in a lot of instances where you have a big office, say, and people are at one end and the other. They may decide to come and meet up somewhere convenient, usually at the coffee corner. But yeah, it's now the most used communication method for most businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, social media is, again, that's fast becoming very much used in a lot of instances now. Most businesses have a social media presence in some form, and it has many advantages. It's almost like communicating face-to-face. Yeah, the ability to share photographs. It helps create the bonds between geographically dispersed employees. Sometimes where you've got people in, well, an instance, I'm not quite sure where you're located. Are you locally in the north or in Manchester? Yeah, but we've got some people on, in other countries where we have to, respect the time element as well, whether in front or behind us or whatever. So social media is fast becoming a preferred method for a lot of organisations. Sorry? Yeah. Offline media, traditional methods such as circulars, notices, meetings, minutes are still used in organisations for communicating day to day. Quite a lot of offices where small teams work together will have a daily morning meet or whatever to discuss what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis. Where it may be a fast-moving environment where things do change from hour to hour, and obviously that needs that face-to-face initial or quick communication where they can communicate with several people at once in a small group to actually say what needs to be done. I've worked in small groups where I actually allocated work at that point. So that everybody knew exactly what the goals and missions were for the day and what needed to be done urgently and so forth. And I did that for quite some time on a regular basis in an engineering environment. Missions and goals, again, are communicated to employees in this fashion, which is an example I was just giving you there. Again, a lot of organisations will have a notice board. Some have newsletters. Some of those are electronic as well now. But again, it's a method of communication. That was just telling you where it all came from. Now, this presentation and the other pieces of documentation that are on our Moodle system, I will actually shut this down for now. I hope I don't shut run down. I'm not particularly good with this yet. I haven't, right, yeah. on a booklet or something to read or some notes on all of the specifications for the unit. These are actually mainly ones on there. You'll need the declaration of originality form when you start to bring some work in. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So we've now got introduction to communication, introduction to business communications, presenting information effectively. All of these are online for you to access through this learner management system, and to actually pick up the recording if you want to go over any of the bits again that you've missed, or if you want to pick up the slides and go through the slides yourself. That's also a very good option. So on that now, have you got any further questions for me?
Yeah, I've got a question particularly about the communication models. That, like, what is the communication model being widely used nowadays, or to which we could relate in today's world? Like,
well, the main one.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, go on.
No, that's okay. I was just repeating my question.
Yeah. What you need to do is look at all the communication systems. If you look at what it's asking you on the sheet, if I get the Unit 3 instruction. The assessment criteria, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So categorize the aims of business communication. So that's looking at what the communication is trying to achieve, yeah. So the different categories of information that needs to be delivered, benefits and limitations of a particular communication system in a given situation. So you need to pick out one communication method and just do an evaluation of the benefits and limitations of that particular communication medium, and put those down, you know, in a sort of report format. And then a swift explanation at 1.4 of the different communication models. It's not, I'll just see if there's any guidance on that. Just a second. So you can actually use the, to complete the brief, you can actually use the assessment brief here. You're working in a human resource department of Wheelie, a small company producing wheelie bins. Due to some recent sales figures due to poor communication and data confidentiality being breached, the company director has asked you to educate the managers and staff about the importance of communication. So your first task is to send a newsletter to all staff regarding the purpose of communication and what medium to adopt depending on the situation. Your newsletter should contain an article explanation of the aims of communication with 3 examples to illustrate different aims. So one can be just straightforward information, one can be, it could be pictorial information that needs to be sent, it could be technical information that needs to be sent. So there's 3 examples there. A diagram showing the communication process with a legend describing the barriers to communication being from the sender, the receiver, or both. And a diagram showing a simple communication model within an organisation, and comment on how the relationship between the managers and staff communication. Delivery and submission, 1 newsletter, either printed version or email version. It doesn't matter which. Yeah. So that's task 1. This will cover assessment criteria 1.1, 1.3 and 1.4, 4.1 and 4.2. So basically, if you follow the task, yeah, that's given here, you will have covered the assessment criteria for those parts of the unit there. Again, the other tasks will then lead themselves into other parts, 1.2, 2.2, 3.1, 3.2, where it asks you to do something else. What I would suggest is that we start off with just task 1. Yeah. A lot of students like to make a start on a task and then send that part by email to their tutor and ask them to, you know, give an evaluation. Am I on the right track? Is this what I should be looking at? You can then get some feedback fairly quickly, and then you'll be able to continue with the task. How does that sound?
Great, that's fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
because, as I say, your tutor's on hand at the end of the email, you know, all the time basically. So if you ask for information, or if you're not understanding something or want clarification on anything, use email regularly, and then you'll get your response as quick as possible, and you'll be able to continue then as quick as possible. Now, there are other tasks within this. There are 3 tasks altogether to complete the full unit. But like I said, make a start on task 1 first, and when you've got some material together on that task, you can then send it in, and it will be looked at by the assessor, who will be your tutor, by the way. And then once that assessment's made of that, you will get some feedback on that. What I suggest is that you send the document in Word document, because then it can be put on to review in Word, and you'll get at each individual assessment criteria, you'll get some feedback on that, so that you know exactly what you need to do. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Have you any further questions for me this afternoon?
Not as yet.
Not as yet. Okay. Well, as I said, if you think of any afterwards, or you're not sure, you can just send an email in, and we'll pick that up and respond.
Okay.
Is that fine? So if there's nothing more this afternoon, I will declare the meeting closed and thank you for your attendance.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.